So the last couple weeks, we've seen some crazy things happen in our world, right? We saw Hurricane Harvey. We saw the H-bomb, Korea. We saw earthquake in Mexico. It was like 8.1 or 8.2, right? We saw I've got pictures to go along with this. Here we go. Harvey. Crazy, right? Imagine if that was your house. We have, there's some picture of how much water was dumped. 33 trillion gallons of water, of rain, have fallen on the Gulf of Mexico. And if all that water were collected into a cube, this is how it would look next to downtown Houston. That is crazy, right? That is a lot of water. Then we had Irma, and Irma wreaked havoc on Florida, the Keys, and some islands. It was gnarly. Then we had the earthquake in Mexico, and that caused great destruction as well. I think the last total I heard was something like 96 total deaths. And you might hear that and you might go like, not well, it's not 1,000, not 3,000, but at what number do we start getting really concerned and do we start to grieve, right? We see all these horrible big things happening in our world. And it's crazy. And we're kind of removed from it over here in Southern California, sitting on an earthquake fault, and we're just fine, right? Things are cooling down weather-wise, and, we're doing all right. But the reality is there's all kinds of hurtful, difficult things that are happening all around us, right? I mean, people are getting divorced, there are car accidents, there's shootings, there's disease, there's children being born with deformities, and it moves us to ask the question, does God care? Does God care? And if he does, why doesn't he do anything about it? Really, why doesn't God do anything about it? Last week we talked about Jesus, and we talked about Jesus' pursuit of a woman. Do you remember this? He goes to Samaria, and he goes to Jacob's well, and there he finds this woman. Do you think Jesus had an idea that this woman was going to show up that well alone at that time of the day? Yeah, seriously. He comes looking for this woman, and he sits down with her, and he begins telling her that even though he'd like a drink of water from her, that he has the source of living water. He says, drink of this water and you'll never be thirsty again. And we saw the heart of Jesus in his pursuit of people who are just totally messed up, people who have wrecked lives, people who are in desperate need. And Jesus goes and he finds those people. Tonight, we're going to see how Jesus knows you, he cares about you, he's able to meet your needs, but here's the deal. His first desire is to make you holy rather than healthy. This is huge. So we're going to look at John chapter 5. I'm going to read through it real quickly, then we're just going to buzz on through and explain, kind of unpack this big idea statement right here. So if you have your Bibles, John chapter 5, if you have your phones, you can power up, you can sync to, you can click, you can engage, you can invoke, whatever you need to do, get to John chapter 5. And it says this, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, different location. He was in Galilee, then he was in Samaria, now he's in Jerusalem. Jerusalem by the sheep gate, a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has five roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me." And Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." And at once he was healed. And he took up his bed and walked. Now, that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, the man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, Who's the man that said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." And we're going to stop there. We're going to talk about it more in the weeks to come and unpack it a little bit more. But tonight we just want to focus on what Jesus encountered with this man. The big idea: Jesus knows you, cares about you, is able to meet your needs, but his first desire is to make you holy. First thing I want you to notice is that Jesus, he knows. And we've talked about this a lot in the past several weeks. Jesus knows. Jesus comes to Jerusalem and he intentionally goes to this pool. I mean, Jerusalem is a big place. He could have gone all sorts of different places. He could have gone to where the good restaurants are. He could have gone to where the good shopping is. He could have gone to where the cool people are to hang out. He could have done all sorts of different things, but he comes to this pool. A pool where it says there's multitudes of invalids. Jesus goes there intentionally. And there weren't just a handful of people there. There's a ton of people there. The blind, the lame, the paralyzed, and one guy who had been there for 38 years. Well, it says he's been an invalid for 38 years. We don't know if he'd actually been there at that pool, been coming there for 38 years. We don't know how old this guy was. Maybe it was in his 50s. Maybe he was 40. We don't know. Maybe his people had been bringing him since birth. I don't know. I don't know the details. But for 38 years, this man has suffered. And you thought going through 4 years of high school was suffering, right? 38 years. That's practically a lifetime, especially back in that day when you didn't live very long. And he's been plagued all this time. And he comes to this pool. This pool, it's fed by an underground stream. And what would happen was, every once in a while, the pool would kind of bubble. The water would stir. And the thought was that when this happens, people thought that actually an angel of God was coming down to the pool and kind of touching the water, getting in the water. And the idea was that the first person to jump in the water after it starts to move, well, that person would be healed. And so this guy, 38 years probably, is coming to this pool, and he's hoping, when that water stirs, can you imagine, your eyes are just fixed on that water, it's perfectly still. When's it going to move? When's it going to move? It's moving! It's moving! And he wants with all his might to get in the water and be the first one in. But guess what? He's an invalid. He can't move. He can't get in. What am I supposed to do? And you can just imagine the frustration day after day, time after time, seeing the water move and thinking, oh man, if I could only get in there. And he can't get in there. Hoping a miracle would occur. Notice verse 6. It says this: when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been there a long time. Jesus sees him. He didn't know this guy. He didn't have like some type of relationship with him. His disciples didn't like lead him over. You know, like sometimes, important people have a handler, like the president might have a guy right next to him. Okay, there's so-and-so, you're about to shake their hand. This is, Bill, He didn't have that. But he sees this guy and immediately he knows what's going on with him. There are times when we feel alone. Times when we feel like no one knows what is going on inside. Times when we're suffering. Times when we just wish we could have some type of way of letting someone know what is going on inside. And the reality is, Jesus knows. He knows you through and through. He knows you better than you know yourself. We talked about that this past Sunday. He knows the number of hairs on your head. If anyone knows you, it is Jesus. Psalm 139:2 says this: you discern my thoughts from afar, talking to God. God, you know what is going on in this noggin from far away. He says, even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all together. Jesus knows. He knows you. He knows exactly what's going on in your mind. He knows what you're going to say next. But it's one thing to know about the suffering of others, isn't it? I mean, you might know about the people who are hurting in Houston or in Tampa or in Mexico or anywhere else around the world. Does that mean you give a rip? Not necessarily. Just because you have information doesn't mean that you care. But the reality is, Jesus not only knows about this man, but he cares about this man. At the end of verse 6, Jesus asked the man, "Do you want to be healed?" The man doesn't answer yes, does he? He doesn't say, yeah, please, I'd love to be healed. What does he do? He can't help but express to Jesus the anguish he has been going through. He can't just give a simple yes, because it's been 38 years. Someone asks you how you're doing. Would you like to be healed? They don't just say, yeah, I would. No, they start telling you their story and how horrible it's been. He can't just give a simple answer. It says the sick man answered, verse 7, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm going, another steps in before me." You can just imagine the heartache, the pain, the anger, the frustration, and just totally spirit of defeat. 38 years? I don't know how he answered. Maybe it was that kind of energy is like grueling. Jesus, do you understand? Or maybe it was just like, I've been here at this pool and the water gets stirred and I can't, it's no use. Of course he wants to be healed. No one will help him. Let me ask you something. Where is this man's hope? Where's his hope then? His hope is in the water, right? Is that the right place? It's not. His hope is in the water. It wasn't in Jesus. He's looking for some magic water to save him. And what does Jesus do? He comes up and thumps him on the head and says, Hello, you're looking in the wrong place, sir. You should have been looking at me this whole time, the living water, but you've been looking at this dumb water right here. Come on, get a clue." Jesus doesn't do that, does he? Jesus doesn't say, "Hey, I want you to figure out life and I want you to start trusting in me and look to me and get your act together and then, we'll talk about your healing." He doesn't say that either. What does it say? Verse 8. Jesus simply says to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." Notice, the man didn't deserve to be healed, did he? Didn't deserve anything. He didn't have some type of religious awakening and all of a sudden become a Christian. No, that didn't happen. He didn't say, "Jesus, I trust you. I give my life to you. Please heal me." He didn't say that. He didn't offer Jesus money or promise, "I'm going to turn my life around. I will never do that again as long as you heal me." He didn't bargain with God. There's nothing here that indicates that he did anything to cause Jesus to want to heal him. You know what? That's good news. That's really good news for you and for me. Because it seems like Jesus just heals him for the plain and simple reason that he cared for this man. He cared that this man had suffered for so long. Have you ever gone through a difficult time and it went on and on and on, and you felt like no one cared? Here is evidence that God does not take lengthy suffering lightly. He cares about you. Jesus just heals him because he cared about him. John Piper says this. This is really good. He says, "So not only does Jesus know you perfectly, but he is easily moved by the misery you feel. His therapies are not always what we want. He doesn't do what we want him to do all the time. But that's not owing to his heartlessness. He's not heartless. He's compassionate to us in our misery." That's pretty awesome, isn't it? God knows and he cares. But that's not enough, is it? Because I can know about the people in Houston. I can even care. I can feel sad for them. But do I do anything? am I able to do anything? Jesus not only knows, not only cares, he's able. Check this out. Immediately after, Jesus says, get up, take up your bed, and walk. What happens? The water started stirring, right? And Jesus took the man. He said, all right, let's get you in here, right? No, that didn't happen. What happens? The man jumps up. He just gets up. He just picks up his mat and he's like, up, here we go. He didn't struggle. He didn't, with his atrophied muscles, he didn't say, oh, I feel something happening. He didn't strain. He didn't struggle. He just gets up to his feet. Verse 9 says, at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked. Whoa! That's amazing. That is the power of God. It's a power unlike any other, that when God speaks, boom, it happens. It happens because he's sovereign over all things. To be sovereign means to be in control, absolute control of all things. Things fall apart at his command. Things rise up and are put together and come to life on his command. What have we learned so far? Jesus knows, he cares, and he is able to do whatever you need at any moment. Any moment, he can do it. Isn't that good to know? Isn't that so good to know? But it leads us to another question, doesn't it? If God knows and cares and he's able, then why doesn't he help me? Why doesn't he help me? Let's look. So the man had been healed. It's an awesome thing. He'd waited 38 years. Healing comes from a totally unexpected source. And we pick it up in verse 13. It says this, now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn and there was a crowd in that place. So here's what happens. Jesus heals the guy. The guy gets up. Cool. Everyone's like, what? Billy? What? You're walking? And people are like, and the crowd starts getting up all around. And before you know it, Jesus is gone. Where'd he go? What did he do? He just disappeared. He didn't. I mean, Jesus, why aren't you hanging out? Like, hey, here's an example. What people are going to believe in you. They see this guy walking around. Like, let's go. Jesus, where are you? What is going on? It's a little strange. You're just walking away. Jesus, if you really cared, why didn't you stick around? Jesus, didn't you realize there's a multitude of sick people here? Jesus, do you care about these people, or do you just care about this guy? You're just going to disappear? You heal one guy, get everyone's hopes up. They think, hey, the miracle man is here, the healer's here, and he's gone. What? I wanted to be healed too. Jesus, where are you? They didn't even know it was Jesus. They're like, who is this guy? Where is he? And he's gone. Why didn't he help them? Why didn't he heal them too? That's a really good question. I'm sure that right after that guy was healed, the place probably went crazy. Kind of like a birthday party, and that kid who's like 3 times larger than everyone else comes out with the pinata, just go whoop, and the thing just obliterates, and candy's going everywhere, and all the kids just like, I think it was like, that candy, gee, he's healed. Oh, where, how'd it happen? He jumped in the water? No, he couldn't get in the water. How did it happen? I want some of that. 38 years, and all of a sudden he's walking. What a sight that must have been. That's legit. We finally found what we're looking for. But Jesus bailed. Why would he bail? Maybe it was because making people healthy was not the main reason he came. Maybe it was because if people start lining up to have their bodies fixed, that they would miss out on the healing that needed to be done inside their souls. There are a lot of people going to church who are looking to Jesus to meet their need. You might have done it. I've done it before. We look to Jesus. Jesus, help me out here. Help me out here. Help me out here. People are looking to Jesus for money. They're looking for jobs. They're looking for women. They're looking for men. They're looking for passing grades. They're looking for Jesus to fix broken relationships. They're looking for him to fix a car, or bring a house, or bring kids, or bring happiness, or bring me a sense of fulfillment. Jesus, meet my need. And it's true. None of these needs and none of these desires are bad in and of themselves. And none of them is too big for God to handle. He's sovereign. He could meet any of them. Boom, 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 boom. Whenever he wants. And if he cares, though, then why doesn't he meet the needs? Maybe it's because there's something more important. Maybe it's because Jesus' main goal is not to make you healthy, happy, or successful. Maybe it's because he wants to make you holy. Because rich, happy people, successful people, people who have everything that they want and don't have Jesus transforming their life, lose in the end. Have you ever seen that old bumper sticker? I think it was like an 80s thing. Matt probably knows it. He who dies with the most toys wins. Seriously? Exactly. And that's the reality here. He who dies with the most toys, they still die. And without Jesus, they lose everything. Mark 8:36 says this. Jesus said this, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" Let me ask you this. How would you like to have the best, the happiest, most joy-filled, most exciting, most action-packed day in life and then be in agony for the rest of your life? Would you like that? Or would you rather have some difficulty for one day and spend the rest of your life in paradise? Yeah, that's not a hard question, right? It's a pretty easy question to answer. Of course, we're going to choose one difficult day and paradise for the rest of our lives. It's not a hard choice. Jesus could take away all your pain. He could take away all your trouble. He could take away every obstacle to happiness right now. But he wants to do something so much better for you. He's not concerned with the one day and this momentary life that we have. He's concerned about your eternity. He doesn't want to heal you just right now, though sometimes he does. He doesn't want to make this life, bring heaven to this momentary life that we have right now. He's concerned about heaven for eternity for you. He wants to make eternity paradise for you, and he wants you to be there. Jesus wants to make you holy, because if he doesn't make you holy, then you miss out on that. You might have a wonderful life right now, and then be in agony for eternity. After a little while, Jesus shows back up. Did you know that? He shows back up. Jesus found the man, it says in verse 14, found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." Did Jesus come back so he could get a thank you from the guy? He's like, "Hey, you forgot to, give me a tip for the service I provided." No, he doesn't do that. He came back because he wants to address this guy's bigger issue. The bigger issue is the sin problem. And it's not that this man was a bigger sinner than everyone else. It's that he was just like everyone else. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. He's in the situation everyone else is in. Just like all of us, this man has a heart that is turned away, is in rebellion, living in disobedience to God. And his relationship with God is against him because he has turned his back on God. He has a sin problem separating him from God. And Jesus knows this. And Jesus knows that if you don't fix this sin problem, then you're in big, big trouble. Something much worse is going to happen to him. What's the something worse? Well, what could really be worse than 38 years of agony as an invalid? How about hell? How about living eternity in anguish because you weren't made right with God? See, Jesus is so much more concerned with your holiness, with you coming to realize, I need Jesus. I'm not perfect. Life is never going to be perfect because I live in this sin-filled world. And I got a sin problem. I need my sins forgiven because I'm not in right standing with God. And if I meet the end of my days in not in right standing with God, then I'm in big, big trouble because God has set his face against me. Jesus wants to make you holy. The way he makes you holy is not for him to grab you by the collar of your shirt and say, "Hey, buddy, Hey, girlfriend, you need to step it up. You need to stop at what you're doing. You need to start living the way God wants you to. No, Jesus comes to you. He finds you because he cares about you. And he says, I was able to take care of your biggest need. And I did. And I make you holy. Because I went to the cross and paid for every single one of your sins. There's a guy named J.C. Ryle, an old guy who wrote some amazing things. One of my favorite quotes from him is this. He says, health is good, but sickness is far better if it leads you to Jesus. That's good. Jesus knows, he cares, he's able to meet your needs, but his first desire is to make you holy. He does heal sometimes. But I think when he heals, that's just to give us a taste of the healing that's going to happen in the life to come. When he blesses you in this life, maybe gives you some good things, that's just a taste. I want you to know how good it's going to be on the other side. I'm not going to take care of everything right now because I took care of the most important thing right now so that you could come to the other side. Come with me. Trust me. I'm all you need. I'm the living water. Do you know him? Have you trusted in him? Have you confessed your sin and said, Jesus, I need what you did on the cross. I need you to make me holy, make me right with God. If you haven't done that, you can tonight. There's no magic to it. You just simply confess your sin and you trust in what Jesus did. But what about the rest of us, those of us who have placed our trust in Jesus? My question for us is, are we looking to Jesus right now? Or did we trust Jesus for the most important thing, and now we're just so concerned with all the little things in our life, all the pain, all the suffering, all the trouble that we have in life, and we're just looking for that quick fix. Jesus, fix it right now. Are we looking to Jesus to fix every problem, take every pain away? Or how about this? Are we praying that through every problem and every pain, every difficulty that we face right now, that he would be making us more like himself and better prepared to live in perfect paradise with him for eternity? I think this affects the way we pray. I think that as difficult things come into our life, yes, we cast our cares on him because we know he cares for us. But our real prayer is, Jesus, even if you don't take away this right now, I pray that you'd use it to get me ready for what's to come. I want to be ready because I know life is just like a day, and I've got eternity that I'm looking forward to. Would you bow and pray with me?